What's up, guys? Welcome back to Fit Body Secrets, where my mission is to bring you guys inspiration, motivation, and some tips to help you guys on your fitness or your fat loss journey. And today, I want to talk a little bit about some negative nutrition thinking traps. And this is honestly, you can really apply it in a number of places, but these are the common things I see that hold people back from ever actually truly committing to actually, walking through the process of going from point A to point Z where you want to get to, or leaves you feeling like you are constantly on a diet and you can never break free, or you're going to end up regaining the weight. My goal today is that I give you guys some things to think about a little bit differently so that as you're going into the new year, or you're actually finishing out 2024, you have just a different perspective on things that maybe you have been thinking of in a way that is actually negatively impacting your relationship with food, your results, and all that stuff. And I want to start by just talking about how these thoughts and behaviors are not going to correct themselves overnight. You have to realize that a lot of the things I'm going to talk about today are coming from past experiences, so things that you have done in the past and have continued to repeat over and over again, or they're like things that you are constantly ingesting via social media, via marketing or whatever. They're just creating these beliefs in your head that often aren't even true. So I want to kind of break down this today. And I wanted to also take the time to break it down from two different perspectives, because there is actually kind of like two camps when I'm thinking about this. On one side, I've got the person who is really having a hard time actually fully committed to the changes that they need to make in order to not just lose weight, but maintain their fat loss and actually live in a body that is fueled and healthy and all of the things that you want in life, right? Like, so we shouldn't be living to eat just to lose weight. Like, eventually we want to get to a place where we eat because we enjoy food and it's actually fueling our body, and that means it's enjoyable and it's fueling our body, and we're seeing results in the gym and we're feeling good in our life and we can go out and all those things. We want that. Like, that's the end goal. Also ensuring that we look the way that we want to look. And then on the other side, you've got the camp of people that are so committed and so disciplined that they don't know how to be flexible. You're stuck in this mindset of like, if I veer off the plan at all, I'm going to sabotage myself. So there's really two schools of camp. And a couple of other things, guys. I got my coffee here, and it's been a while since I podcasted this early. I'm changing up a lot of things this week. Y'all know I was in the hospital last week. If you don't know that I was, and I am just like feeling so much better, more like myself. Took a little bit of. I'll go into my stuff, but long story short, if you're listening on my podcast and I all of a sudden have a moment of silence, or you're watching me, I am going to be sipping on this delicious coffee this entire time. And if you saw my Instagram post yesterday, you know I don't drink my coffee black. Today I'm drinking it with, I think, cookie dough flavors, skinny syrup, almond milk, and fat-free whipped cream. So good. So anyways, little tangent, but I wanted to, just because I know I always feel like, are people judging me that I'm stopping to take that sip of coffee? But anyway, so that's why I want to go into. I'm thinking about the movie. What is it? Bruce Almighty. I want to take a second to kind of break down both sides of the spectrum today. And I'm going to start with, if you're in the camp of having a really hard time committing to changes, like you find yourself, you literally label yourself here as like a diet failure. You can't seem to find anything that works for you. Every time something comes up, it's like there's just so many reasons why you can't stay consistent with your nutrition. And I could go into all the reasons of why you can. It's just you're likely using the wrong, method. But I want to focus on the mindsets that you are going through and help you counter them. This is a really important skill, and you can apply it in a number of ways in life. We're going to apply it right now to your nutrition. So the first one I wrote down is, I've already screwed up. Why stop now? Okay. So this happens often when you start a diet and you're like doing really good, and you like see something that you want. You're like, I shouldn't have it. And then like, you have it and you're like, oh, that was so good. And like, you already telling yourself like you shouldn't have done that. So you're like, I screwed up. So now you're like, let me eat more because I've already screwed up. So why does it even matter? And I'm going to be honest, like think about the logic and the rationale of that, right? Like if you understand how fat loss happens and how, how we lose weight, gain weight, and maintain weight, it comes down to overall calorie balance. So like you deciding to have a 400 piece of birthday cake or whatever, or 400 calorie piece of cake or pie, and then saying, oh, I've already screwed up, let me eat more. Like now you're actually sabotaging yourself by going down that rabbit hole. But that's a learned behavior. And it typically comes because you've been trying to be so clean and so disciplined, and that food tastes so good. So it's like you're basically, because you're trying to be so good, that little thing just isn't enough. It's just not going to happen. So really what you have to realize is that enjoying a piece of birthday cake or a slice of pie or whatever it is, and I'm saying these things, I shouldn't say birthday cake, but cookies, Christmas cookies, it's that time of year, isn't sabotage. That's actually part of a healthy nutrition plan, even for fat loss. So those things should fit into your fat loss program. If they don't, you are going to continue to struggle to ever maintain. Then you're going to end up being in the other camp that I'm talking about, the people that know they can't deviate from their diet or they feel like they're going to sabotage themselves. So you want to make sure that if you have that mindset of I've already blew it, why stop now? Stop and ask yourself why you're thinking that. Have you been very, very, very strict and rigid on your diet? Maybe you need to be eating a little bit more calories and knowing that like having a little bit of that isn't going to negatively impact your body. But if you take that and you keep going, it's going to negatively impact your body. And I ran into this problem years ago. I was following a very strict diet. And whenever I would have something that wasn't quote unquote on the plan, I would find myself spiraling and I would literally not even know why I was eating at that point. Like it didn't even taste good. It was just like, I'm literally just eating because in my head, I'm like, I'm going to restart everything again on Monday. And obviously over time, I kept gaining weight. So let's break the whole thought that if you had one thing, that it all of a sudden means that everything is thrown out the window and you got to keep going. Like you're just putting yourself, you're literally digging yourself into a deeper hole. Just get back on track. Your next meal can be better. That's it. So, so number one, breaking the hole. I've blown it already. Why stop now? I'm going to take this one a step further and talk about those of you guys that are tracking calories and macros. If you are like, I can't be perfect, or I'm going to be over my calories, so why bother? This is one of the biggest negative thinking traps I see with calories and macros is you would be so much more successful in those moments if you just stayed consistent with tracking without being perfect. Like you would have more awareness and that awareness would drive more accountability. It would likely stop you from spiraling and going further and further and further. And this is why I also really recommend people taking time in their life to track food without thinking about losing weight. Like this is the beginning part of my program and the end part of my program, because it is so important for people to understand what it looks like on your plate to eat enough calories for maintenance. Like that's how you're going to maintain your weight. I say this all the time. The goal is not fat loss. Fat loss is the road to where you want to be, right? If you want to back squat 300 pounds, back squatting 175 isn't the goal for reps. It's eventually training back squats enough and doing it over time to get yourself strong enough to back squat 300 pounds. Same thing here. And I just love losing fitness as an analogy. Okay. So even though you're going to be over on your calories, track it. You might learn that you actually weren't that bad overall. And in fact, for those of you guys that have fear of calories, this gives you a little bit of confidence when you're like, oh my God, I can eat this much food and actually not gain weight. Like that's awesome, right? Like it gives you that awareness so that when you actually go into a fat loss phase, you likely should be eating a little bit more when you first start. So let's not get into the whole, if I can't be perfect, I can't be perfect, so I can't do it at all. That happens all the time with macros. And there's tons of, I can give you guys tons of tips on this too. I have tons of resources, but just don't worry about it being 100% accurate. Overestimate. Number 3, which is kind of number 2, because number 2 was kind of like in addition to number 1. I didn't even really number these. Why am I saying numbers? is rewarding yourself or treating yourself with food. So I've been so good all week. I deserve to have this. Okay. This is such a negative mindset. And I know it sounds like a positive thing. I've worked so hard. I'm going to reward myself by indulging a little bit. But recognize that you literally spent all week or all year or all season, whatever it is, cutting out those foods, which likely you didn't need to do, only to reward yourself with them. Okay. That's like saying it just doesn't make any sense, right? Like you should not reward yourself with the very thing that you're trying to remove. So, two things on this one. Number one is that you don't need to earn your food. You don't have to worry about getting to a place where you actually deserve to eat it. Like you should be able to eat it whenever. And that really like you need to hear that. Now, am I saying that people should be eating Oreos and cupcakes and donuts every single day? Likely not, because those foods are going to trigger you to want to eat more of them. But if you're thinking that you earned it because you were so disciplined on your nutrition, that's the negative mindset. So we want to break that mindset and instead realize like, okay, these foods from a calorie perspective are very dense. They're very easy to overconsume. I need to limit them because I know that when I'm consuming them, it's really hard to keep my calories in check. Okay, so it's changing that mindset as well. If you're looking for a reward for your hard work, don't always look for the scale, but hopefully that will happen for you. Why not reward yourself with better things, right? Like, and I'm going to be honest, sometimes like a reward for me, because I eat very disciplined, is like, but I eat a lot of the same things. So for me, I might reward myself by like, it sounds dumb, but like actually cooking something that like is really good and tasty for me. Like that was this weekend. I do my meal prep so simple, but like this weekend I was really craving some comfort food and I bought myself a loaf of sourdough bread and I made a beef stew and it's amazing. And I know that sounds like that's not like an indulgent food. Well, that's indulgent to me. So it was good and it tasted good. And so don't think you have to reward yourself with food. I rewarded myself by actually putting a little bit of effort into what I was cooking. You can reward yourself with other things, like it doesn't have to be food related, and don't look at your nutrition habits like there's something that needs to be rewarded. Or, I think that the most important thing is just celebrating your hard work in whatever you're doing in life, but don't reward yourself with food, reward yourself with other things. Okay. Here's one that's really going to rain home to those of you guys that are in this season of life where life is chaotic because it's the end of the year and there's a lot of work stuff that you're tying up. There's a lot of family stuff. There's a lot of get-togethers. There's a lot of kids sports. There's a lot of everything. And you're in this place of like, I don't even know where to look. Like you're looking at everything. You're looking at the pile of laundry. You're looking at the grocery list. You're looking at, this whole weekend you're going to be gone. When are you going to do your house chores? Like you're looking at all the shit and you're like, there is just too much going on to be focusing on my nutrition. This is a very common thing. And you're in your head, you're like, I'm just going to just put it off right now. And I'm going to focus on it when things get better. This does not make any sense. We're going to go back to logic again, right? Because here's the deal. You have to eat every single day. If you weren't eating, you are going to waste away. You're going to lose weight, but you're probably not going to lose good weight. And you're obviously, eventually you would die. So we have to eat every single day. If you know that, you also know that you have the choice every time you eat to make the right choices. And again, I could go into what would the right choices be for somebody who is busy as hell and doesn't have time for all this meal prep and all this stuff. But we're going to focus on the mindset today. You have to recognize that every time you eat, you're making a decision. And this is giving you the hall pass to essentially be like, fuck it, I don't care. I'm going to eat whatever I want. And I'll get back to things when things get smoother. And it just doesn't ever happen because if it's not the Christmas season, it's going to be spring break or it's going to be the summertime, which in fact, one of my clients, also a coach, was like, I actually read a statistic that people gain more weight in the summertime. And it makes sense because in the summertime, what are people doing? They're drinking more alcohol. They're out on the boats. They're doing more barbecues. So there's always going to be something. You can't predict what life is going to bring you in January. You could have a setback in January. So you could have all of a sudden a big work project that you get thrown on you at the last minute. There could be a number of things that happen. You have got to realize that there is always going to be so much going on. Here's the mindset shift. We should never be living our life focused on nutrition. Like, the focus should be living your life, and nutrition should be fueling that. Okay, so whatever you got to do to make that work for you is what we have to develop. And for a lot of my clients, that might look like, hey, I'm sticking to pretty much the same foods on my busy days because I know it works. I don't have to think about it. I know it's going to fill my hunger and my cravings. I can pre-track my food in the app so that I know that this is what I'm going to have, or I can jot it down on a piece of paper if I make a change, and then I can add it in there later on. Like, you literally have a system that when you're in like work mode, you're not thinking about food. I have been doing, when I was 19 years old, I made the decision to say, I'm going to take my health seriously, and I'm going to change how I eat. And obviously I'm going to start working out because I was doing jack shit at that time. And I am now 39 years old. And since 19 years old, I have been that person that is disciplined, that makes sure that she gets her workout in, that makes sure that she's eating enough, all of that stuff. But before that, I was flying by the seat of my pants. So it's so important for you guys to realize that having a system is important. And I'll be honest, I didn't always have a system, and it's why I failed. But since having a system that works for me, it's evolved over time, but you got to have a system. And like I said, mine evolves. Right now, here's my system, and I'm going to be honest. I am in a place of a little bit of burnout of doing meal prep. Like, I am. I kind of got to a place where I just don't want to meal prep. I just don't care. So instead, I haven't been meal prepping. I've been eating foods that don't require a lot of prep. I've been relying on things and just making them taste better. So I'll throw a bag of frozen veggies in the air fryer and I've been prepping my protein as I go. I've just been, and I think it just came down to I've been doing it for so long, and I'm like, do I really need to be doing this? And with last week of me being out, down and out, I was like, you know what? I just don't think I want to spend the time on it this week. I wanted to experiment with just not doing it. And I've been doing this, I guess, for probably about a month now. I really haven't been prepping. I will sometimes still prep, maybe, if I'm baking one sweet potato, I might bake 5, why? Or if I'm cooking 4 ounces of beef on Monday, I might just cook the whole pound so I don't have to worry about it. But I'm not intentionally prepping. So, but I have a plan. I know what I'm going to have, and it's in the refrigerator, and I keep my schedule in mind. So you got to do the same thing. When I was working a busy ass schedule and I was leaving my house at 6 o'clock in the morning and I wasn't getting home until after 8, literally had a cooler packed every single day. And the first thing I did when I got home at night, I took out all of the Tupperwares, I cleaned them, I refilled them, boom, in the refrigerator for the next day. And that's how I worked a full-time job and was able to still train and was able to get through my nutrition. So whatever you got to do, we got to find a system. Now, going into the whole too much going on, this might not be the right time for you to revamp everything and have expectations of the scale moving. In a busy season, it's probably not the time to add a bunch of stress. However, it doesn't mean you can't do anything. And doing those things is what's going to help you maintain again. So you've got to figure out what you need to be doing now that you need to be doing next time something happens. And it might be as simple as, if your normal breakfast is coffee and a bagel, you're like, I'm just going to add some cottage cheese to it. I'm going to have a side of cottage cheese because I'm going to get some more protein in. Or you're going to throw protein powder in your coffee. And when you have the decision to have lunch and you're stopping at a takeout place, you're choosing grilled chicken and salad. You're not getting super hyper focused on anything. You're just focusing on what you can control. And when you have a day where you have a little bit more time to think, maybe you are putting a little bit more effort into it. So break the whole thought of there's going to be a period of time when everything is going to be great. And right now you're too busy to do it. You got to simplify. And that's what I do. Sometimes I have to tell my clients, hey, you're focusing on too many things. Let's just focus on this one thing. And you're like, that's it? Yeah, that's it. That's enough. That's effective. Minimum effective dose, guys. Don't make your life harder. And as I finish up this topic, I'm going to go into the next one, which is I can start over fresh. Okay. Your diet doesn't get a clean slate. It doesn't. Like you are already full of, like I mentioned, diet baggage from years and years and years.
Mhm.
That ain't going anywhere. Every time you've done something and failed or been successful, your brain and your body remembers it. You've got a ton of experience. We need to change your experience. You are not going to start over fresh. So if you're thinking that January 1st is going to be magical and life is going to happen, I know that most people are. I think that we're also experienced enough to know that that doesn't really ever happen. But it's not going to get easier. You're going to have the same problems. Everything is going to happen. You're going to have birthdays and anniversaries and long work days and days with kids at sports and all that's all going to happen. You got to realize that. So you can't start over fresh because you can't undo all of the years that you have already built under you. And that's good and bad because you have some data on what works and what doesn't so that you can now create a better plan moving forward. So hopefully that was helpful there. Just want to make sure I wrote down a couple more things I wanted to talk about. Okay. All right. So going into that one, because this is kind of a tangent into that one too, is the mindset of like when you're starting over fresh, that you have to like clean it all out and overhaul it. And this is why it feels hard for you to dial in your nutrition when you're busy, like in a busy season like now, and why you wait until like you feel like you have clarity. Because in your head, you're envisioning the jars in the refrigerator or the Tupperwares in the refrigerator lined with like your protein and your veggies and your carbs, and you're not eating out and you're not drinking alcohol and you got rid of all the sweets and like everything is just like perfect and you have everything organized and everything just feels in line, right? Like that's not realistic and nor is it enjoyable, okay? Like you have to realize that the best lives, the ones that are people that are genuinely happy, live in the gray area. Structure creates freedom because if you're structured, the majority you can build flexibility in. So you got to remove this whole like fresh start, clean slate, everything's got to be super clean eating mindset. It don't happen, guys. Chocolate is enjoyable. I can't tell you how many clients I will have. Like I had a client this week and she's like feeling a little embarrassed that I had pizza last night. I was like, girl, pizza is delicious. You're not eating pizza every single night. This girl has lost so much weight. She looks amazing. And I'm like, the last thing you should be worried about was having a couple of slices of pizza on a Sunday night. You know, if you were doing that every night, that's a different story. But this is where you have to have a little bit more of the gray area mindset. Like that's what you guys need. In fact, all of this stuff is really, you can remove the all or nothing thinking and just like live in the gray. Okay, so remove that clean it out mindset. Now I'm going to go over two things that actually are going to segue me into the opposite end of the spectrum, the opposite camp. So if you are somebody who is like super dialed in on your nutrition and you have a hard time being flexible, okay? This is where, so I'm in the gray, but I tend to be closer to this side. You might be in the gray, which is a good thing, and you're closer to the other side. I'm closer to this side, okay? But there are two mindset thinking traps that are common in both sides. One of them is fear of offending others. Okay. So, like, you're afraid of how your food decisions are going to impact the other people around you. So, you either indulge or you don't indulge. Like, you're worried about being judged if you don't indulge. So, like, you indulge. So, this is where, like, you're so worried about offending others that you don't even think about what you truly want. So, when it comes down to food decisions, reminding yourself that when you're making changes and you're trying to make changes, two things happen. You have different values. You're valuing your body differently. So, you're making positive changes for your habits, but you also like food just doesn't do it for you like it used to. Like, that's a good thing. Like, when you no longer have to be so engulfed in the food or the drinks to enjoy yourself, like, that's huge progress. When the food doesn't do it for you anymore, that's progress. I'm going to write that down because I'm going to talk about that. Sorry, I have to write these things down when they come to my mind. Otherwise, I'll forget. In fact, this is one of the things that I've been doing when I work out, and it's mentally it's so hard. But yeah, like you got to realize that like your food decisions should not impact anybody else. And it's okay to say no. Like you got to be okay saying no. That's actually maturity in nutrition. Like not feeling like you have to say. And I can ask yourself this: if you had a food issue, like an allergy, and somebody offered you peanuts and you were allergic to them, and you're like, no, thank you. Are you going to feel bad about it? No, because you're like, if I eat this, I'm literally going to go into anaphylactic shock, right? Like it's okay to say no just because it's a preference. If you don't like something, if you don't like spinach, are you going to eat it? No. So why care? Like, don't be afraid to say no. The second piece of this that goes on both ends of the spectrum is FOMO, fear of missing out. Like thinking that if you don't indulge, that you're missing out or you're not going to be able to have as much fun. Guys, your experiences are more about who you're doing, who you're hanging out with, what you're doing while you're doing it. And every once in a while, it might be about the food. Like I was so excited about my Thanksgiving dinner because I had busted my ass all day and it came out so good. Like everything just looked amazing. So yeah, I was surely going to be enjoying my Thanksgiving dinner. That's part of the experience, right? You're going to a restaurant where like it's a really cool place or it's like a hit place and you've never been there before. Maybe they have like I don't know, like it's one of those like Brazilian steakhouses or like a I don't know, like a fun place to go to where it's not like your traditional. Those are like experiences and you want to enjoy it. If it's something that you do every single weekend, not probably that special. But your fear of missing out is causing you to miss out. Your fear of missing out is causing you to miss out on what you can actually achieve. So saying no is not like a bad thing. And I think that this comes down to the thoughts, another thinking trap, as I'm going to these thinking traps, that this food is all of a sudden going to disappear. It's never going to be around again. Like, I'm not going to be able to have this again. There was a time, obviously, when seasonal food was a thing. You know, like we really didn't have, I mean, I can remember in my lifetime where finding pumpkin puree in the middle of spring canned was hard. Like a lot of grocery stores didn't carry it. There was a lot of things like that, you know, but nowadays everything is accessible year round. So it's like, if you think you're going to miss out because you're not going to have something, reminding yourself that you can probably pick it up at the grocery store any day of the week. Okay. So remove this thought process that you have to like get it all in right now. Enjoy what you want. I love saying have what you want, leave what you don't. So pick your battles, pick your wins and pick your battles. Okay. Or pick your battles. I guess winning would be part of a battle, but anyways, tangent. So don't let that stuff stop you. Now we're going to flip to the other side of the spectrum, which is, I feel like probably less common, because what typically happens in this end of the spectrum is it tends to lead people to the other side. Like you go so far in this deep end that like you jumped out of the pool and you jumped to the other one. Like that's really what happens. You literally realize you cannot live like this, and you regain the weight, you feel guilty. Now you have what I call fat loss PTSD. And you don't even want to go into a fat loss phase again because you remember how restricted you felt and you don't want to have to go down that rabbit hole again. And I don't blame you. In fact, I often say I never want to have to gain weight again, or I'm sorry, I never want to have to lose weight again. And it's for me, it's one of the hardest parts on my journey because I was overweight at one point and now I'm trying to build. And I'm like, okay, like, is this going to stop going up? Am I going to be able to control it? Absolutely, because I have science and I know what I'm doing and I'm measuring things. So let's go on to the other side of the spectrum. All right. I'm scared to ruin my progress. So if you are somebody that is super type A dialed in and you actually want to have something, but you're like, I don't want to ruin my progress. There is some goods and bads to this, right? Like I said, structure creates freedom. You have a choice. And I think the main thinking trap to get out of is that having a specific food or enjoying a specific meal is going to undo all of your progress. I like to think of your progress kind of like when you're assessing progress, I should say, if you had a calendar and let's just say you've committed to tracking your food and following like a macro-based approach, and you're eating really good, and you are literally, you can check every single day of the month, like check, 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 check. And like you have like one meal that's like out of the norm, that's not tracked or higher calories. You've been within your calories every day. You've done everything. That one day is not going to make a difference. That one meal is not going to make a difference. How you think about it, though, does impact how you feel in your life. You will continue to feel like you're constantly in a restrictive mindset and always following a plan. So you got to get out of that perfectionism and realize that, like, every once in a while, be flexible. Every person has a different level of flexibility. But the thinking trap that you're going to ruin your progress by eating a freaking Reese's peanut butter cup or having dessert is not right, right? Like if it causes other things to happen, like it spirals you, now we're going into the other side of the thinking trap that we have to get out of, thinking traps we have to get out of. So these are all very, 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 in fact, most people have probably switched sides of camps many times in their fitness journey. Okay. Another negative thinking trap on top of that is the thought that I shouldn't eat this. Like you see something and you're like, I can't eat it. I should not eat this. It's like bad. I still sometimes fall into this thinking trap. So like, for instance, if you've seen like in my past, maybe month or two, I've been eating a little bit more processed food. I've had a couple of like crumble cookies, trying out some local cookies at the farmer's market. I'm a cookie girl. I'm a dessert girl. But I still have those thoughts of like, I should not be eating this. Like this is like full of sugar and white flour and like just doing nothing for me nutrient wise. But like, I also realize that like, it's okay to have those things whenever I want them. And sometimes it might be a Tuesday afternoon and I felt like having a cookie, so it's important to recognize that like there's no foods that we shouldn't eat unless they actually make us sick or cause us to think negatively, which making sure that we're not in a negative thinking trap. All right. So there's no reason for that. The next one that I wrote down is I can't enjoy these foods without overdoing it. And this is a common one. And it does come down to past experiences with the other camp. I've already blown it, so why stop now? You have in the past found yourself in a situation where you've had these foods and could not stop consuming them. And there are two ways that I really navigate this with my clients. One of them is food desensitization. So oftentimes I will have a client actually eat those foods on a regular basis, because what that does is it removes I would say the idol, the feeling of it being like an idol, like it's just so special that they have to have it. When they're having it regularly, they no longer like feel like they have to have it, right? It's like, I can have this anytime. And the second thing is ensuring that when we do go into a fat loss phase, that we've spent enough time, looking at what maintenance looks like, and we work from more calories versus less calories, because your hormones do play a factor in how you think. Your hormones send signals between your brain and your body to do things. So your leptin levels and your ghrelin levels are going to impact how you want to eat. So what I will often do is encourage my clients to start with higher calories so that they don't feel like they can't have enough of the foods that they want to have. Let's be real honest, okay? Like a serving size of most desserts is very small and not enjoyable. So I want my clients to understand that and know that it's okay to want 2 servings of it and be okay with that. That's actually part of eating a balanced diet. Like the serving sizes of most things that are calorie dense are not a whole bunch. Like here's an example. If you have like a bowl of oatmeal, you're going to feel really full, right? It's like, so a bowl of oatmeal typically is going to weigh about 150-ish grams, 200 grams maybe. I might be off a little bit on that. I'm trying to calculate. No, it actually would be closer to 300 grams. So that would be close to about 12 ounces. So somewhere between like 10 and 12 ounces of food volume. Okay. So like if we think about the serving size of a cookie, it's about 1 ounce. right? Like, so think about the volume that you're consuming and recognize that, like, yeah, like you're not going to feel full after one freaking cookie. So I'm not telling you eat 10 ounces of cookies, but just giving you a little bit of perspective there. So getting yourself to a place where you're eating a little bit more calories or desensitizing yourself from food can help break this mindset. That's going to also help you break those negative thinking traps of like, I've already blown it, can't stop. So that's really, really, really important. And then the last one that I wrote down on this end, and this one is one that I also can highly relate to in my past, is compensation patterns. A lot of people that are super dialed in have found ways to compensate, whether it's they think like, okay, if I overindulge, now I'm going to restrict myself for 5 days. And they think that that's going to help. And it actually just hurts because it causes that cycle to happen more. Or over exercising, like they're like, I've eaten so much food and I've got to burn it all off. Neither of these things are impactful long-term or necessary. I think that a better method, and I know this firsthand, like I'm going to be transparent with you. There was a time in my life where I was eating such a restrictive diet. I would binge. I would probably consume 5,000 to 7,000 calories if I had to think about it. And for like 3 or 4 days, I'd be like, okay, if I ate 7,000 calories, then if I ate 1,000 calories per day for the next 3 days, then hopefully that'll average out. Like I would do that shit. Like, and I wasn't calculating it, but I was just like guesstimating. And it was just stupid. So stupid. So you don't have to do that. Like you don't need to do that at all. In fact, the better thing to do is to not have the overindulgence by actually giving yourself permission to have a little bit and knowing that like you can go back for more tomorrow. Like that's it. Food's not going anywhere. Okay, so breaking the compensation patterns. So that's really what I have today. I think the main thing that I want you guys to get out of all of this is that when it comes to making changes to your nutrition, you have to be willing to put the work in on the mindset stuff. And that's not sexy. It's not fun to be like, oh, you got to work on your mindset. Like you got to get your mindset in the right place. But it's true. How you think about something changes your perspective 100%, right? Like, so for instance, you can have 3 people showing up to the same CrossFit class. And one person rolls out of bed, like, I really don't want to go to the gym. I fucking hate working out. And one person's like, I know I got to go to the gym. I don't feel great, but I'm like going to get through it. And the other person's like, I can't wait to get to the gym. They're all going to the same class. Let's just say they had the same sleep and everything. Nothing was different. It all comes down to how they think about it. And the person that goes in like, oh, I feel like shit, blah, 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 is probably going to have a piss poor workout. Now, sometimes you get in there and you're like, I feel better, right? But like, and then the person's like, I'm just going to get through it. Like, they're just going to get through it. They're not going to enjoy it. They're just like pushing themselves through it. The one that shows up and they're like, I'm super excited. They're like going into it and they're perceiving it as like great. And their whole experience of the workout, right? That person that's like slugging ass, if the whole time they're in the workout, they're like, I just can't wait to be done. Like they're not going to enjoy it. Whereas like the person in the middle that's like, all right, I don't feel great, but like I'm getting through this and I'm feeling a little bit better now that I'm moving. And then the other person's like, no expectations. I'm just like here to have fun and get fit, right? Like 3 different perspectives. This all comes down to how you think, everything in life. I have clients that have very similar lifestyles, very similar issues. And what changes is how they think about things. You know, I can have 2 busy moms with sports on the weekends, with all these things. One of them is going to approach the weekend like being prepared. The other one's going to be like, I don't have time. I'm too busy. Right? Like same lifestyle, same busyness, everything. But one person's like, I'm going to take 10 minutes at night to prep things. The other one's like, I just can't. I'm going to avoid it. And they're going to see that one of them is going to perceive the prep work as stressful. The other one's going to, see it as like necessary. Right? So it's just a very different mindset that you have to have. So hopefully this episode did give you some things to think about. I know it went a little bit longer than my usual episodes. I do see some comments in there. So, hey, Aaron. Aaron is definitely one of my clients who is doing awesome. So, and overcoming some long-term negative thinking traps. So, and if you guys have any to add to this that you want like to talk about, like feel free to post them in the comments because I know I didn't cover all of them. I could go down the rabbit holes here. But if you found value in this episode and you're looking for some guidance on your nutrition, definitely feel free to reach out to me. I offer free nutrition strategy sessions to kind of look at where you're at, give you an opportunity to see what you could achieve. And obviously, I try and do it in a way that fits your lifestyle. But other than that, I hope you guys are having an amazing holiday season. I know it is the time of year for me where I just want to move a little slower. And usually that would be hard for me. I'd be like, nope, got to keep going, keep going, keep going. Like, you know what? This year, I'm going to take things a little bit slower. Because last week, my body was telling me, you got to slow down. So little tangent. And I will fill you guys all in on me, my journey, but I don't want to fill anybody in until I get definitives. After my hospital stay, I do have a lot of clarity on what's going on with me. And I just have to follow up with a couple of doctors over the next couple of weeks for specific treatment. So that's going to help me help you guys understand a little bit more. But it's very important to talk about because it's something that I think that a lot of female athletes deal with that need to look at and consider taking seriously. So all that to say, have an amazing day. I hope you guys are enjoying your week. And that's it. I'll talk to y'all next episode.